One Nation has done a really good job of convincing the average disenfranchised voter that they're the party to back, whilst also holding onto this really niche, racially motivated voter base. That's what I want to focus on this video, the people who believe in more extremist things like re-immigration or ethno-nationalism. Those types of political philosophies are really the more horrible things we've contracted from the United States or the UK, and I am convinced that people who believe in these political philosophies really hate this country and just want it to fail. I know some people are already going to be frothing at the mouth like Pauline when she sees a sandwich press unsullied, or a Muslim she's yet to make feel unwelcome in this country because they think I'm saying immigration is not a topic of conversation we can have, or all One Nation supporters are racist, but I'm not saying that. I'm specifically focused on these niche, racially motivated voters who, in my opinion, hate this country because their fixation on non-white immigration won't just fail to help this country, it's going to actively harm it. Ethno-nationalism is this fringe political ideology that focuses on a shared ancestry. In our case, they'd claim that's the white, colonial, European Christians who settled here. Most of the time, though, these people will instead frame it as a loss of our heritage, this cultural erosion, things like that, when really what they're talking about is this perceived loss of the white race. It's covertly mentioned in a couple of other ways. They might refer back to this vague era of old Australia, which is almost always during the White Australia policy, by the way, as this vague golden age of Australia and Australian identity and culture. Sometimes they'll also make this weird historical protectionist argument where we have to protect and respect the intentions of the founders of Australia, but very rarely is it about the history, and more so historically what those people looked like, because their care for history conveniently starts after colonization and right before the end of the White Australia policy. This part of the conversation is always boring to me. This vague general attempt for us to respect the old version of Australia really is this covert way that eventually gets you into defending a white ethno-state, or as close to a white ethno-state as you can get. When Toby Tosspot, real nickname by the way, is advocating for the superiority of the white race, and conveniently he's the man in charge around this golden age of Australia we should be striving for, I feel like your intentions and goals are pretty clear. Again, this isn't all One Nation supporters, but One Nation seems pretty comfortable cozying up to these types of voters. I think one of the reasons for that is both One Nation and these ethno-nationalists have no problem using immigration as this one-size-fits-all tool to manipulate or misinform voters into blaming immigrants rather than former governments, typically right-wing governments. Australia's failures when it comes to housing, the economy, and apparently culture all get talked away by this vague argument of, well, that wouldn't happen if we stopped immigration, but that just isn't true. It's actually got very little to do with immigration and more so bad economic decisions, which not only can be reversed, but also benefit from immigration. Let's start with housing. Obviously, immigration puts pressure on the housing and rental market, but banning all immigration, or yes, even only non-white immigration, doesn't just not achieve anything, it will actively make things worse for everyone. Obviously, immigration immediately impacts housing stock, but you know what impacts housing stock more? Not building the homes. Under Labor, there has been an increase in the number of dwellings being commenced, but we keep running into the same problem, a lack of workers. Young Aussies are not going into the trades, so we keep hitting this workforce wall. There is one particular group, though, that is helping to ensure we can keep still building the homes. And I'll give you one guess what group that is. About 1 in 4 building and construction workers were born overseas, and only about 3% of current building and construction workers were immigrants who have come here in the last 5 years. Unlike what One Nation or ethno-nationalists are telling you, the solution to the housing crisis isn't to shoot that number down to 0, it's to strategically pump it so we can build more homes, decreasing the cost of buying a home or renting a property. Cutting the number of immigrants working in the building and construction sector to 0 is an indefensible position. What is defensible, though, is the argument that we haven't done a good enough job targeting skilled immigration, specifically for the building and construction industry. But under Labour, that is being resolved. Net overseas immigration is broadly declining, and we are specifically targeting unique skills we need to build more homes. If we listen to One Nation or the ethno-nationalist desires to cut all immigration to zero or dramatically reduce it, we would be without workers and there would be more Aussies who are without a home for longer. And who's that for? I guess partially it would satisfy the desires of long dead Toby Tosspot, but the average Aussie would struggle in the long run. And when you look at Pauline Hanson's voter history when it comes to making sure you can afford a home or your rent gets cheaper, it doesn't particularly seem like she cares about you. If you care about the cost of living, One Nation and their ethno-nationalist supporters should terrify you. Quick lesson, labor productivity is how much someone produces in an hour. Higher productivity means a greater number of goods and services. In a healthy market, that means there's greater competition, so the prices of things get lower, wages get higher, and overall, the cost of living eases. The reason Aussies are struggling right now is historically, we've had a pretty stagnant labor productivity because previous Liberal governments haven't really done an effective job at automating important things like our ports or the farms, getting into things like advanced manufacturing, or effectively using skilled immigrants. It's been a national failure. But under Labour, we're beginning to fix that. But One Nation wants to destroy the progress we've made and will continue to make. Albo's Future Made in Australia and National Reconstruction Fund specifically work on improving productivity by trying to make Australia a world leader in renewable energy, something that Pauline Hanson and One Nation has vehemently fought against. These advancements are going to take time. We're not going to see major changes in 1 or 2 election cycles, and they're also going to require a strong workforce, both one that has domestic skilled labor and international skilled labor. The issue is not immigrants coming into this country. The issue is we are not using these immigrant skills effectively. Nearly a quarter of skilled immigrants are working below their skill level, and that's unacceptable. But the solution is not to listen to One Nation or these ethno-nationalists who want to remove them from the country. It is to get them the relevant skills or training so we can start using their skill set here to improve labor productivity and make the cost of living better for everyone. If you want cheaper goods and services, One Nation won't just fail to achieve that. They're going to actively make it worse for all of us. The final issue ethno-nationalists and One Nation seem to have is this supposed cultural erosion that is impacting Australia. But I just don't think it's happening. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think everyone should be able to immigrate to this country. I like the Home Affairs Minister having new powers to cancel or reject a visa. I like Labor's changes to the student visa that have a higher English language proficiency score requirement. I like Labor cracking down on extremist political philosophies that are being imported into this country. But I also like getting to live in a country where there isn't 100% cultural homogeneity, because that sucks. I am not seeing strong evidence that indicates there is this huge influx of immigrant crime. And Pauline Hanson's Trumpian-style idea of blocking all immigration from Muslim nations seems to serve no other purpose than to vindicate her supporters' already held beliefs that Muslims are dangerous based on cherry-picked statistics. I kept seeing this claim that 1 in 140 Muslim men from Lakemba attempted to join ISIS, or on a national scale, it was 1 in 400 men. But when I went looking for these statistics, I could not find any solid evidence they were actually real, and it really was a waste of my time. The most accurate information I could find is that 220 Australians attempted to fight for ISIS, but we don't know demographic or locality information because ASIO does not give us that information. So already that Lakemba claim is not verifiable. And overall, any 1 in X number of Muslim men claim isn't verifiable because it's relying on old census data for the denominator and really vague guess and check work for the numerator. The ratio you get dramatically changes depending on how you classify individuals who attempted to leave the country but were rejected. You can't confirm they were going to fight for ISIS, so you are using this vague guesstimate statistical analysis to perpetuate what is, in my opinion, a xenophobic argument that does not have a strong basis. We can have broader conversations about culture and assimilation and whether we are this melting pot right now or whether we are struggling to fully integrate different cultural beliefs under one Australia. But I don't like having that conversation when we're not starting on the same footing and you are bringing out these vague guesstimate statistics to prove your already held beliefs. I understand people are struggling right now. And I want to be very clear, I don't think that the average One Nation supporter is a bad person. But I absolutely do think they are supporting bad things. One Nation's policies will end up hurting the people they supposedly care about. If we let people get away with pushing the blame onto immigrants, or we allow these arguments being put forward by One Nation or genuine ethno-nationalists to become normalized, it's gonna leave us in a horrific position I'm not sure we can fully come back from. The housing crisis will get worse. The economy will get worse. And the culture and identity of Australia will be damaged potentially irreversibly. One Nation will not be able to form a majority government, and Hanson's a senator. She couldn't even become the prime minister. But a strong Senate representation really would be a national stain on this country, in my opinion. It's not gonna help anyone. It's just going to hurt us. But hey, come let me know what you think in the comments, like and subscribe. It's been real.